גונילה עוסקת בתחום ניהול הפסולת כבר למעלה מ-15 שנים, ובתחום האסטרטגיות התקשורתיות כ-25 שנה. גונילה היא מנהלת התקשורת ויחסי הציבור והיחסים הבינלאומיים של חברת SYSAV, השוודית, שאחראית על הטיפול בפסולת של דרום שוודיה. גונילה תדבר על מודל ניהול הפסולת השוודי בראי כלכלה מעגלית, תסביר לנו איך שוודיה הצליחה להגיע כמעט לאפס הטמנה, תשתף בתובנות של פיתוח מתקני השבה לאנרגיה, בד בבד עם השתת תשלום לטיפול בפסולת על האזרח. גונילה, בבקשה.
Dear ladies and dear gentlemen, dear organizers of this convent, thank you very much for inviting me to give this presentation. My name is Goniela Carlson and I'm the Director of Public Affairs at a company in Sweden called South Scania Waste Company, SYSAV. My company is a treatment company of waste and we are treating approximately 900,000 tons of waste every year. And we landfill approximately 1.5% of this waste every year. Though, to give you a start, I would like to give you a little bit information about Sweden, how Sweden is. Sweden is a country up in the north in Europe, and we are approximately 20 to 21 times bigger than Israel. We do have a population of a little bit more than 10 million inhabitants, and that is 2 more million than Israel. And the largest city is Stockholm, that is the capital in the middle of Sweden. And we do have Gothenburg in the west, and we have Malmö in the south. As we have 10 million inhabitants, the population is not evenly spread out throughout the country. We have 75% that lives in an urban area, while the rest of the people is living in the countryside. In Sweden, we are very proud of our waste management system. The recycling rate of household waste is 99.2%. Only residues from the treatment process is put on landfill. This result comes from a development that has occurred during the last 50 years, but it started already in the 19th century. The increasing environmental awareness in the 50s and the 60s in the world, and especially in Sweden, was the background to the creation of the Swedish model of waste management. And especially, it was 2 laws that was legislated in the 60s and the 70s that was the driving force for this development. The first law, the Environmental Protection Act, was put in action in 1969, and this legislation sharpened the requirements for landfilling, and all dump sites were forced to be closed in a few years' time. In 1972, the second very unique Swedish legislation was put in action, and this is the Municipal Waste Management Law. In this legislation, the municipalities are given the full responsibility for handling the household waste. As a result of this legislation, the municipalities started to work together to fulfill the requirements. Open dumps were closed and limited companies and other corporations arose very fast. There were one more important thing that occurred in the 70s. This was a huge oil crisis globally. Incineration plants that were connected to the district heat during the crisis now produce heat for the cities. And this is very special for the cities and the countries in the north of Sweden, as we have very huge district heating nets. This is the Swedish model of waste management and how it was founded. And still today, 2021, the legal responsibilities from this legislation remains. Municipalities in Sweden are today responsible for creating waste plans, the local regulations regarding household waste, as well as collection, charges that should reflect the self-cost principle, information to the public, treatment of the waste, and of course the cooperation regionally. Producer responsibility were legislated in 1994. So in Sweden, we do have a packaging waste, electronics, batteries, and end-of-life vehicles and tires as producer responsibility. And this is really important for the Swedish waste management model as well. When it comes to the circular economy and the waste perspective, this is where the waste hierarchy comes in, as well as the Green Deal with the circular economy. And this has set a very new scene for the Swedish waste management. However, already in the 80s, the Swedish government declared waste as a resource. Therefore, we have had a mindset in Sweden since a long time that recycling must increase and landfilling must decrease. And to be able to achieve this goal, Sweden has, over a very long time, invested a huge amount of money in building facilities for waste handling. So we have a very good base infrastructure for waste management. When you look at the waste hierarchy, waste management, all 5 steps in this waste hierarchy should be used in the waste management. A sustainable waste management can only be accomplished through a combination of methods, and therefore in different facilities. There is not one single method that fits all the waste streams, and the more complex the waste becomes with the development of the society, the more complex the waste management becomes. The circular economy puts more focus on the 2 first or upper steps of the hierarchy, though sustainable waste management produces products that replaces raw materials on the market. And this is very closely connected to the circular economy. It is important to note that all 5 steps in the waste hierarchy will be needed for a very long time to accomplish a sustainable waste management and reach a true circular economy together. There are opinions believing that the circular economy can replace, for instance, incineration and disposal. This might perhaps happen in the future, but it will be a long time before we are there. I will now go through briefly the waste hierarchy and the different actions and operations in Sweden. If we start with the prevention, as the circular economy says, decoupling the consumption from the waste generation is very important. This is not something that is obliged to do. This is something that is voluntary actions in Sweden at the moment, but it will be obliged by legislation in the future. To change consumption behaviors today, we need to educate, inspire, and give advice on how to behave as people in a society. And this is 4 examples on how we work with communication in the South Scania Waste Company to increase awareness of sustainable consumption and production. We do campaigns to school children, and we try to educate them to use leftovers instead of throwing it away, and use it for creating new recipes. We have a competition that is very popular in Sweden and is spreading throughout the country all the time. In my company, we are having study visits. Every year, we meet approximately 12,000 people in person and educate them in waste management systems. Nationally, we are working with a sorting system with special pictograms that will ease the sorting of the waste as well as recycling when it comes to that. We also have a sponsorship where we create awareness and interest, and we spread the word that we need to work with sustainable consumption and production. And this is also very popular in my company. If we go over to the collection part, that was the prevention. But to be able to treat waste, we need to collect. In Sweden, since a long time, we have a source separation as the base for our waste management, and this is very important. You can see on the photo 2 bins with 8 fractions together. This is a very popular system that has been created in the south of Sweden in one of the municipalities of my company. And this is actually a very good way to have a good quality on the sorting, as well as a lot of sorting of all the fractions, how it should be done. We can see that the degree of sorting and the quality of the waste compared to if you have recycling stations or where you share bins in high flat-rise buildings, the sorting of the waste increases in this system where you have it at the door. So we try to increase the door-to-door collection system in Sweden. Unfortunately, there is still a lot of unsorted waste in the rest fraction. So we do have a lot of communication to do, even though that we have 2 bins with 8 fractions in many municipalities. The next step is to take the hazardous waste out of the eco-cycle. It must be collected separately and not mixed in the other waste streams. And this is important to get a high quality of the recyclables that get back to the market. We have special streams and special collecting systems for the hazardous waste. And as you see in the photo, we have 3 different systems. One is at the recycling center. We have as a car going around in the cities collecting waste, hazardous waste as well, small hazardous waste. And we have in the stores special systems for leaving small hazardous waste. And this is the way we treat and collect the hazardous waste out of the recycling centers. And as I said, recycling centers, this is the main way of bulk waste for coming into the treatment of waste management in Sweden. In total, we have almost 600 recycling centers in Sweden. In my company, we have 15, and we have over 2 million visits every year in 15 recycling centers. In Sweden, we have 27 million visits at the recycling centers. The fee for using a recycling center is often paid in advance together with the household fee. Some municipalities have limited the number of free visits. Others, like in my company, we let people use them for free because we know the importance of the bulky waste coming in this way. A lot of the waste at a recycling center must be pre-treated before recycling. So we do have a huge amount of pre-sorting as well with different waste streams. Just the last one that we have introduced, we inaugurated this autumn, a very new large-scale pre-sorting plant, and that is for textiles. I will come back and talk a little bit more about textiles in a while. This plant uses the NIR technology, and it sorts 16,000 tons of textiles every year. And the textiles are used for fiber-to-fiber recycling. And this is the step before the treatment of waste. We do have one more very important thing, and that is preparation for reuse. And this is something that we will be better in the future. We must be better in the future of preparing. We do have a shop in Malmö. It's called the Reuse Shop for Building and Construction Material. At the recycling centers, you can leave things that is for building material and such things that other people can use. And we transport them to the shop and people can buy them back. And it's a very popular way. Especially the bricks is very important. At the recycling centers, we also have collection of reused material. So we can give it to help organizations to selling them back. Unfortunately, there is a lot of material on the market and products, so people are not very fond of buying all of them back. So we can see that a lot of this reused material ends up in the recycling or incineration stream anyway. We also have biological treatment. In Sweden, we have a national goal treating 50% of the food waste biologically. And at the moment, there is 700,000 tons treated, and that is not all of the municipalities that collect it separately at this time. It has been voluntarily up to now, but from the 1st of January in 2024, it will be obliged to collect it separately. And this goes for the garden waste as well. We produce biogas and biofertilizer of the food waste, and it goes back on the market in that way. The garden waste is composted, and we sell the compost back to the consumers, either as green compost or as potting soil. And this is also very, very popular product as it has a very high quality and to use in the gardens or in as potting soils that you can have. Now we come to the biggest treatment method in Sweden still. We do have 2.4 million tons of household waste that is incinerated yearly. 35 incineration plants in Sweden produce 18.5 terawatt-hour of energy, as well as 2.3 terawatt-hours of electricity. In total in Sweden, every year, 7.6 million tons of waste are incinerated. 500 tons are domestic household waste and 1.5 million tons comes from abroad. Waste that comes from abroad is very good for the climate as well as the rest products in our facilities. As we take waste, we treat that should have been put on landfill instead. And that makes it great and great advantages as well for Sweden and the heat and electricity that we produce, as well as lowering the greenhouse gases in Europe. From all of the waste for incineration plant, there is rest products. Approximately 16% is bottom ash and 4% is fly ash. We take the bottom ash to a special sorting plant and sort out metals, and it's sorted out to the size of 0.2 millimeters. The rest product, the gravel, is sold back to the market and can be used for construction material. We do have a slight problem with the legislation here. We cannot put the gravel everywhere, and we are trying to make it okay to put it on as construction materials in certain places, but this is not ready yet. In a modern sorting facility that we built and inaugurated the last year, we sort down to the metal size of 0.2 millimeters, and we also can take out a lot of precious metals. When we have treated the waste in all of those different ways, there is a little bit residues that we are disposed at landfill sites. Last year, 37,000 tons of residues went to landfill in 2009. We do have a landfill tax on the waste that we put on landfills. It's approximately 50 euros per ton. Mostly what goes to landfill is ashes, sludges, and asbestos cement. And it's a very little of the household waste that goes to landfill, only less than 1%. This slide shows how the different treatment methods have developed over time in Sweden from the legislation was put in force from the Swedish model up to now. And you can see that the landfill part has decreased almost until 1–2%. You cannot see it in the diagram. And you can also see that all the rest of the treatment methods have increased, and this is how we want the development to continue. We will even see a less amount of waste in the future, we hope. So, if we go over to the challenges for waste management in the circular economy, the aim is that in 2030, the society will be circular, says the European Union. There is a lot of challenges connected to this paradigm shift, for it is a paradigm shift. For instance, consumption should not result in increasing amounts of waste. Products must be designed and in a safe and a non-toxic way to be able to be recycled, reused. Products must also be eco-designed, and the collection and waste shipment will be strictly regulated in the future. There will be a special attention in the upcoming years on electronics and batteries, plastics, textiles, as well as building and construction materials. But what challenges does we see in Sweden for the circular economy and the waste management? As you can see in the waste hierarchy, we have the treatment of the waste of household waste in the three lower parts of the circular economy. Though the circular economy goes from linear to circular way of living, and this is the upper part of the hierarchy. So we can see that it must be an increase in the combination of prevention, reuse, and waste management in the future. Just to give you a few examples of what the challenges are. We do start with the prevention again. Today, Sweden, we make use of resources as if we have 4 Earths. This is not a sustainable way of living. Last year, in April, we reached what we call the Earth Overshoot Day, the day when we have used our first globe, our first Earth. But we continue consuming in Sweden. And we consume 3 more globes in materials and products, and this is not sustainable. So we do have a lot of communication to do to change behaviors in the future, to change people's behavior, to decouple the generation of waste from consumption. We usually say that we are not going to stop consume. We are going to change the consumption to be more sustainable. That is one of the challenges, and this is huge. The other, if we go to reuse, is that it must increase. In the last year, we had 34,600 tons in total that went to reuse in Sweden. And this is far too little if we want to reach a circular economy. Another thing that is very important is that we need to have more supportive legislation that steers up in the waste hierarchy. To enter a true circular economy, the legislation must support. The fastest way to fulfill the circular economy is the legislation. And in Sweden, we have seen a dismantling of waste management and the legislation and the new taxes that comes. So we can see that legislation has a very fast steering effect for us to adapt to the new legislation. And this is very, very important. It puts responsibility to the municipalities to drive the changes. And one thing that has happened in Sweden at the late 2020 was that we have seen a dismantling of the producer responsibility. It was taken away on the cardboard and paper, and this is something that we haven't seen back in the history. So we must follow this question very thoroughly in the future. One more challenge that we have to deal with is with plastics. Plastic is a fantastic material if you use it in the right way. Though the production of plastic, there is so many sorts of plastics on the market. So it's almost impossible to know what kind of plastic and how to sort it and to recycle it if you're not an expert. And this is very important to deal with in the future. We need standardized and recyclable plastics that is easily sorted, because we do not want to have plastics in the incineration plants because it produces carbon dioxide. So this is a huge challenge in the future to reach the climate law that we need to about the carbon dioxide to air. Textiles. You have seen that we have a sorting plant for textiles, and this is for every year 100 million tons of clothes are produced on Earth. Most of this is put on landfill or incinerated. It's almost a very, very, very slight part of the produced textiles that is recycled. And this must change. For when you produce textiles, you use chemicals, you use a lot of water, and also land area. And this land area must in the future be used to produce food for all the inhabitants on Earth instead. So this is an urge to deal with the textiles in the future. Our contribution so far is the sorting facility in a large scale for fiber to fiber recycling. And we are very, very proud of this new facility. The last challenge is the incineration. We see it that it is a necessity in the future, and we must also decrease the emissions of carbon dioxide. It will be needed for a very long time in the future, because when you treat waste and recycle waste, you have a residue. The residue is very difficult to use for recyclable material. So you can use it for incineration, for heat purposes, and for electricity. As well, we have a lot of products going on or going around in the society that is with chemicals and with a lot of built-in problems from the past. And sometimes it's better to destroy this and take it to incineration plant, and you know that it's out of the eco cycle. So we who are working in the waste management sector in Sweden, we can see that incineration will be a necessity for a very long time in the future even though we must decrease the plastic amount of waste coming in, and we must decrease the carbon dioxide. This means that we also must build a carbon capture storage in the future, and this is very costly to keep the waste management, incineration as a treatment method in waste management. Conclusions. Waste management in Sweden and the circular economy. We can see that we need to create more sorting of the waste at the source as we need to have after collection. We need to change behaviors for prevention of waste and reuse of waste among the public. We need to have production of products that is eco-designed and designed safely and in good manners. And we know that circular economy will be costly and it take a while to put in a new paradigm into the society. I really thank you all for listening to this presentation. It's been an honor to tell you about the Swedish waste management system and also the circular economy and the challenges that we deal with in Sweden, as probably all of the world is doing at the time. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation.
Thank you very much, Goniela. Do you see me?
Thank you. I can see you. Yes, thank
Hi.
you.
How are you?
Hi.
I'm very sorry for the delay, first of all. And
No problem.
well, you know, Israelis, it happens. Actually, so I would like to ask you, and I think that we have time for only 2 questions. If we have more time, we will add one more. So my first question is, as you told us earlier, one incentive for establishing waste-to-energy plants was the oil crisis during the 70s, which made these facilities vital and economically profitable. Is the Swedish model still economical? And if it is, what makes it economical?
Yes, okay. It is still viable, the economic situation with the waste management, though we have the treatment fees for the waste when it comes into the company, as well as we sell the products out on the market in the other end. So we have like a production process of raw materials and products, and also the incineration. We sell the electricity and the heat to the market. And in that case, we have created income for the company from 2 ways, from the treatment fees and also from the products that we sell. So yes,
They
it's
are okay.
still good.
Okay, so let me just translate like shortly. אז גונילה אומרת שהמתקנים האלה הם כן רווחיים עדיין, לפחות כלכליים. ההכנסות מגיעות גם מההיטלים והטיפול שהרשויות משלמות, אבל גם ממכירת האנרגיה והחום של המתקנים, וכן, עדיין משנות ה-70 ועד היום, עדיין כדאיים כלכליים. Second question, Goniela. Well, let me tell you, in Israel, recycling centers are less common, at least not the way that you presented. Can you elaborate on this concept? Which kind of waste goes to the recycling centers, and why does it need the preliminary treatment? And most important, how do you motivate people to bring their refuse to these centers?
Okay, let's start with the motivation. That is really easy. People like to go to the recycling center because they can clean out the house, and then they can go to the recycling center for free and leave it. And they also do this environmental service, so they are very happy to do it and they feel very good about it. So motivation is not a problem in Sweden. People like to go there. They can leave all kinds of waste that comes from the household. Bulky waste, you can leave furniture, building construction materials, garden waste, all the packaging you can leave. So in principle, you can leave all the things that you can't put in the bin.
Okay. my next trip will be to Sweden. I have to face this motivation. So, but you are really giving us hope that it is possible.
Good.
So, Goniela, thank you very much. I hope to see you soon in person, maybe in Athens in October. And stay in touch. Thank you.
Let's hope so. And thank you very much for inviting me. And we'll see each other soon in the future, in person, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.